Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the August 27 meeting of the Chatham Finance Committee. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29 signing of the Acts of 23, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31, 2025. This meeting of the Chatham Finance Committee is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. Reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling phone number 508-945-4410. Again, 508-945-4410 and enter conference ID 367-739-33 #. 367-739-33 #. Or one may join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. Well, this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel TV. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Let's start, if we could, please, with the roll call. Tommy Doan.
Here.
Barb Madison.
Here.
John Papalero, I know, could not make it today. Joanne Sprague.
Here.
Andy Young.
Here.
Kristen Andres.
Here.
Tracy Shields.
Here.
Eric Whiteley.
Here.
And Chair is present. I would like to start, please, if we could, with a moment of silence for Edward Footer, who tragically passed away yesterday. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We have a two-item agenda, today. Most importantly being Article 1 of the special town meeting, proposed spend of $4 million to complete the upweller and pier facility over at 90 Bridge Street. Given the number of folks on board in the room and the number of correspondences received electronically, all of which were circulated to the members of the Finance Committee by either myself or by Carrie, I'm going to limit public comments to 4 minutes per speaker with extra credit for finishing early, if you can. If not, that's fine. I'm also going to declare a conflict of interest kind of test that I've been going through. I control a company which owns a modest percentage, I think it's about 7% of Aquacultural Research Corporation, which is the entity where the town of Chatham, working through typically the county, gets its shellfish seed. I've spoken to my appointing authority, who does not see a conflict in my engagement on the matter. I put a call into the State Ethics Board, not heard back. But I have spoken with the State Ethics Board on this matter previously, when it's been before the committee. They have previously declared there was no conflict, so I'm going to move forward on that basis. I will, however, file the requisite form with the town manager's office once I figure out exactly which of those forms is relevant. So with that as background, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie Mazerow for the introduction of Nicholas Cantella, Chatham's new Assistant Finance Director. Carrie, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Carrie Mazerow, Finance Director. I'd like to introduce my new Assistant Town Accountant, Assistant Finance Director, Nick Cantella. He has been with us since July, and he previously worked in the town of Brewster as the Assistant Town Accountant there. We are very happy to have him join our team. So
Hi.
Please welcome. Thanks.
Terrific. Well, is it Nick or Nicholas?
Nick, please.
All right. Well, welcome. We look forward to working with you. Carrie has spoken highly of you today, and so we look forward to working with you going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Terrific.
Thanks.
Okay.
So we're here today to discuss the article Waterfront Infrastructure Project at 90 Bridge Street on the special town meeting warrant that will be Monday, September 16th, 2024. This article is a borrowing request for $4 million for the purpose of paying costs for the continued improvements for 90 Bridge Street. I did hand you some packet stuff. You also received that in an email that I sent to you, but so there's the staff report, the draft of the special town meeting warrant, the questions that everybody had asked and answers. I will turn this over to Greg Berman, the Natural Resources Director, to start the presentation.
Terrific. Thank you, Carrie. Welcome,
you.
Greg.
Thank you all. Greg Berman, your Director of Natural Resources. Excuse me. So here we are again. We have had requests from the public, specifically committees in town. The Shellfish Advisory Committee requested that we put a special town meeting forward for the sole project of 90 Bridge. The South Coastal Harbor Plan Committee also put forth the opinion that it should be a separate article for 90 Bridge Street, not included with the other projects from the original waterfront bond. And in fact, the Finance Committee, during some of our discussions, some of the concerns raised were the overall quantity of funds requested in that initial bond, and also the many projects, the more, not as many chances to get a bite of the apple as we went from project to project. So before you now, a lot of those concerns have been addressed. If they had been addressed, we might not be here now, but we shall see. Town Council has weighed in that the existing town ballot would apply for this special town meeting. That was one of the questions raised and has been provided as the link for the full opinion. So this is just a quick refresher and update on 90 Bridge, and then, excuse me, Renee would then have the opportunity to come up and address the questions in that Q&A format that we provided to you. So as you all probably recall, the previous bond was for $11.4 million, 5 separate projects. 2 of those phases of 90 Bridge were lumped into that one project for a total of $4.5 million requested at the time. That passed the ballot but failed at town meeting. Of the 5 projects within that original bond, really 90 Bridge is the one that's ready to go right now. The others still need design and permitting. Riders Cove, a small portion of that has been begun just for the boat trailer parking lot expansion, but they all still do need more time versus 90 Bridge, which is the next one ready to go. The permitting status, this is just for 90 Bridge, and we don't need to get into all the permits unless you would like to. Very basically, the most important one is the variance that we have for the building code. We do need to start work on January 1st, or we would fall under the new building code. The variances we have would still stay in effect, most likely, but the building code has not been finalized, despite it coming into effect at the end of the calendar year. So there might be new variances that we would need to apply for under that. Starting a project with those kinds of question marks, the question marks also often become dollar signs. So this could potentially raise the cost of the project. This is just 2 looks at the same, coming up with $4 million for this special town meeting request. Originally, we had asked for the 4.5 just for 90 Bridge, but the bulkhead contractor, AGM, came in below estimates, and additionally, the dredge work came in below estimates. So now the amount necessary for completion is $4 million versus that $4.5 million. In that upper right-hand corner, I've showed similar left to go, spent so far. Right now, we would still need about $6.4 million of town funds to completely finish the project, 2.4 of which could be covered by the existing bond and a fiscal year 25 wolf withdrawal, leaving that $4 million needed to proceed. Basically, the rationale for the project that our constituents have brought forward to us: 1, there's a lot of moorings in Stage Harbor. This would lessen some of the crowding on existing infrastructure. We do have our harbor master here if you'd like to ask questions about that specifically. The historic Coast Guard boathouse coming back to the property is something that's been, stressed of value to the town. I'm not sure if the Historic Commission is here, but Ted Keon is available to answer questions regarding that. And then the upweller. It's not supposed to be in that corner. But the upweller is obviously a major portion of this project. It's not just an upweller project. There's also recreational commercial fishing. But we do have Renee, who a lot of the questions posed by the Finance Committee were related to the Upweller project, and we do have a separate PowerPoint to kind of go through all those questions. So I'm happy to take questions with the chair's indulgence regarding any updates versus the plan, or we could move on to Q&A.
Eric, please.
So on the left to go, the $4 million number and all of the math associated with that. So is that left to go? So that can mean a couple different things. Are there follow-on projects at 90 Bridge Street that are not being considered in that number to complete the property fit out?
So that includes everything that is part of the 2019 consensus plan. There are no additional projects in mind after this.
Barbara, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just a little confused. To me, the reason we were having this special town meeting is so we could get started before the 1st of next year, when there were going to be different rules that we might have to comply with. And I think you just said something that said there may be some additional rules even before that we have to comply with that could cost more. What did you mean by that?
And Greg, as part of that, could you please just go back to the permitting slide that we kind of breezed through? Thank you.
Yeah, so the new building code would go into effect at the end of the calendar year. With special town meeting, we could proceed before the January 1st deadline for that.
Right.
If we did delay until the next annual town meeting, that would obviously be well into the calendar year.
Right, but didn't you say that even if we get started right away, there could be some additional factors that have to be considered that could cost more? Some new hoops that we had to jump through? Or are we're all set to start right now?
Correct, yeah, all our permits are in place, our variances, aren't going away. It's the question marks will come after January 1st unless we get started before that.
Okay, I misunderstood. Thanks, Greg.
Apologies, sure.
And Greg, just for clarity, the sake of clarity, are these local variances, these state variances, these federal, where the source of these and potential implications?
Sure, so these are our local building code variances. The state has weighed in with whether they would continue even with this new building code, and they would. So this is, they are our local building code.
Okay, but we do or don't know of the potential implications of them?
You mean as of the January 1st, or?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the argument we're hearing is we need to get this thing going, which is why, in part, why we're having the special meeting, and partly because of these changes in the variance. I'm just kind of curious what these things are that we may need to address.
Yep, that's very understandable. I am curious myself. Our building inspector in town is also curious. The state has not finalized what these code changes are going to be yet. They've only said that they're going into effect January 1st. So that's why there's question marks in our mind.
Okay. Okay, that's sort of helpful, but helpful. Thank you. Joanne, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It goes quickly, but we're talking about an awful lot of money at town meeting and also here today. And for the benefit of the taxpayers who are listening, who don't spend all day figuring this out, when you say we actually need 6.4 million, and we have 2.4 million in the existing bond, can you explain, make that clear to the people who are viewing, please?
Certainly. So
The existing bond comes from where? How does it exist?
Yep, so the existing bond is an authorization to borrow. So the capacity within that bond has not been borrowed yet. And I did just want to clarify that there's not 2.4 within that bond. There's less than that amount. I can get you that amount in just a second. But it's a combination of the existing bond and a proposed 2025 withdrawal from the Waterfront User Fund that would make up the difference in addition to that 4 million to make it 6.4.
So that's a proposed withdrawal
From the,
based on what conditions? How do we already know that that's going to be there?
I just wanted to step in for 1 second. So the original article was from 2017, and that amount was $11.3 million roughly. We still have 2.387 available to use from that original bond for this project that he's talking about. Does that help a little bit?
That helps, and then keep going. And the rest of the funds are where right now, and how do we access them?
The wolf.
Yeah.
The
Excuse
WUF.
me?
Yep. The waterways user fee.
Right,
Yep.
okay. And that's, we have approval to use those funds?
Not yet. They would come in under a fiscal year '25 request. The request would come from myself to each of the waterfront committees. The waterfront committees would then, vote to recommend to the town manager, and it's ultimately the town manager's decision whether to make that withdrawal from the waterfront user fund.
So we're evidently pretty sure we can count on that.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So Carrie, before you head out, I was sort of thinking through the capital stack yesterday and last evening. I think we've done a pretty good job of reducing the implicit cost of this project through state grants, through the WUF. Do you happen to recall or know the bonding? Well, let me back up. Have we bonded that 2.385 that you're referencing?
No, not yet.
Okay. Do we have any sense from our capital markets advisors as to what the prospective cost on that might be?
I don't know. I know that the last time we bonded for the end of FY '24, I
Yep.
believe it was almost around 4% was our true cost interest. It's roughly around there. It was like 3 point something.
Okay. And from a timing perspective, would you anticipate bonding that and the proposed 4 million if it gets approved at the STM at the same time?
It depends on how much is expended in the current fiscal year. Will be determined how much we borrow.
And actually, this construction would occur in the two phases. The piers and floats would be built first, and then to be hopefully quickly followed by the construction or replacement of the upwell or construction of the outbuildings.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. That was actually one of my other questions. Could you elaborate a little bit on the timing of the phasing between piers and floats and upweller as you currently anticipated?
Right, so we currently hope, it's our plan, if this were to pass at special town meeting, to begin construction before the end of the calendar year for the various reasons we talked about, at which point our engineer gave us a ballpark of about 6 months for the piers and floats, and another ballpark of about that same time for the replacement and fit out of the upweller and outbuildings.
Okay, thank you. Joanne, please.
Just another follow-up question, please. Since we're talking money, I know I've already asked Carrie about the tax impact of this. I know it's hard to project, but can you give us a rundown of what the...
So Joanne, actually, I want to hold on that. We've got that sort of slated for the next phase after we finish the operational conversation and whatnot.
Sure, thank
I
you.
wanted to get a,
No problem.
here's the
Okay,
nut, what's it going to cost?
won't forget it.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, back to you guys.
Right, yeah, it's just follow-up questions about the update. Once the committee is happy at this stage, although I'm happy to come back up, ask Renee to come up to answer some of the questions raised by the Finance Committee through email.
Andy, please.
Greg, ideally, the folks who are now working on it, are they also, have they been, or are they proposed to be contractors for the installation of the rest of the piers, or is that still have to go out to bid?
Yeah, it would still have to go out to bid.
Okay.
So that for the cost of that, the estimated cost, it would still need to get fully RFP'd.
Okay. All right. So AGM, who's currently on site, right?
Yes,
They're going to have to demobilize all their gear.
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
That was one of the back about when I first got here, even before I first got here, this was one large project and it got split into 3 phases.
Right.
The first phase here was the bulkhead phase to construct. And if there's a silver lining, one of the rationales was we did expend our Seaport Economic Council grant within that bulkhead. So we are planning to apply for another Seaport Economic Council grant. And that was one of the things that they're not going to award us another one until we spent the last one. So, there is going to be some MOB, DMOB overlap, but that was the only way to do it at this time.
Okay, but I just, my hope was that maybe we could avoid an additional MOB, DMOB cost for all that, but it sounds like we can't.
I mean, we are hoping that, AGM has scheduled to finish September. So this next phase wouldn't start until, a month or 2 after that.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Just so we're clear, it's the town's opinion that we can finish the current work by the end of the quarter, or shortly thereafter, bid this next phase, and mobilize the crew before the end of the year?
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, other questions? Barbara, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Is there any, I confess that I don't really understand how all of this works very well, but is there any flexibility in if it looks like it's going to cost more than pricing that we've been given, do we have any flexibility in being able to alter the plan at that stage and say, okay, well, this is all we have left, what can you do for that, and will it work in what has already been done? I'm concerned about us continually going outside of what has been approved by the voters.
Right, so with the previous bond, that was for 5 different projects, and it did not have a set value for each project on it. With this specific ask at special town meeting, that would just be for 90 Bridge. It would be a maximum of up to $4 million. So that's all that money would be spent on. It wouldn't be spent on, any of the other waterfront projects.
Right.
If it did cost more, we would have to find funds from some other area or try to value engineer the cost down. That said, this is not a cheap project, and we haven't tried to skimp on it, but, there's not too much else to cut unless we start removing, commercial recreational piers and things like that. But for the MOB, DMOB cost, it's just so much more economical to make, this a multi-use facility while the contractors are on site.
Okay, thanks, great.
Tracy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It does seem encouraging to a layperson like myself that the bulkhead work came under 400,000, right? So when does that ever happen? So that's a good sign.
And I mean, not to, another potential benefit is, there's no guarantee what these quotes will actually come in as, but if they do come in below value and we don't spend the 4 million, that's just money that doesn't get borrowed. It's not going to be used for a different project. This is all for 90 Bridge.
All right. Andy? Had your hand up a second ago. Oh. Okay. All right. Thank you, Greg. If there are no further questions from the committee, perhaps we could hear a little bit from Renee about kind of the operational nature of this thing and what it's going to do for us and sort of the size and shape of the current shellfishing industry in town. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the rest of the committee, and thank you for setting this up.
Welcome.
It's not my forte. So thank you. I just wanted to review again that our propagation program supports our commercial industry. Our commercial industry are folks that are domiciled residents here in the town, and it also serves our recreational harvesters. And the primary, the most abundant of those permit holders are resident family permit holders. And of course, it also helps our natural environment. But back to our questions, the first question that I received was to quantify what was quoted in the Cape Cod Chronicle, and this was based on some PowerPoints that I gave to the Select Board. And then at that meeting, we put in the value of the cohogs, total value of the shellfish landed per years, and also using a multiplier effect that I had actually pulled from the Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Association, and they used a 3.1 multiplier effect. And a multiplier effect just says, this industry supports, buyers, dealers, boat builders, and it includes all of those, and those economic benefits manifest through all those other kind of industries. Now, multiplier effects are a dime a dozen. A lot of people use multiplier effects. This one was the one that I took from the Commercial Fishermen's Association. The county uses a 1.79% multiplier, and NOAA uses a 4% multiplier. So in the article, you'll notice that there is, I should go back to say that and quantify that the question was, assert that up to 1.5 million pounds of cohogs landed annually is valued at 11 million with that multiplier. It wasn't. That's the total. So it was the total amount of shellfish landed, and the multiplier effect was on that total, not just on the cohogs. So I hope that answers that question. But for the article itself, it is based on the cohogs landed. So Greg put together a between 3 and 7 million overall economic benefit that is based on that 1.79% used by the county, and at the top level, the NOAA 4%. And so the one that I had presented at the select board was kind of in the middle at the 3.1%. But again, it's based on the total landed and not just on the value of the cohogs landed. So the next question, I'd like to understand the underlying economics of the town operation. This is primarily what is based in my annual reports. It's the permits that are sold. Our propagation shellfish revolving fund is based on the amount of permits sold. We get 75% of the revenues from commercial permits sold and 25% of the revenues of family permits sold. And so breaking that down, 104, just under $105,000 went into the general fund, and $64,000 into our shellfish revolving fund, and that was for last year in 2023. In this year, we actually raised just the family permit fees, and so using the numbers of sales from last year, it's just about, it would add another about $10,000 back into the revolving fund, and even more into the general fund.
And Renee, just quickly, what are the levels of the fees for family and commercial, please?
25%.
No, but what's the dollar figure?
Oh, for residents, it's $45. For seniors, it's $20, and for non-residents, it's $130. And those were just increased last year. The last time they were increased was 2016. And as far as how we are with other towns, we're still the best deal around. So we have shell fishing 7 days a week, and we have product, so.
Thank you.
You also asked me to break down what our expenses are. So again, it's just under $65,000 that goes into the revolving fund. And I did this on a 3-year average because, of course, every year is different as far as our expenditures. And also, sometimes our bills come in after the fiscal year. So I wanted to make sure it was well-rounded and included the seed costs, because that is our greatest expenditure, is our seed. And our seed actually went up 15% this year, which is why we asked for that increase in the family permit fees this year. Our second is labor, between $10,000 and $13,000. We use seasonal labor. We just have our one dedicated propagation staff, and then we actually have our two parts of our department is our enforcement and our propagation. And so what we do is we use our seasonal help on both sides. So folks that want to help out in propagation, we just move them right over from the enforcement side, and they help us with propagation when needed. Because mostly we need them for big projects. We don't need them every single day. We need them when we do the big digs and when we put out, our shellfish. So it makes it much more responsive and we don't have to have somebody on at all times. And then our third is, of course, our pump repair and maintenance, and that, again, that changes annually. Question number 10, how many animals do we currently have? We currently, I broke it down and also where the expenditures come from, because we do actually get support from the county, and sometimes we actually get money from the state for propagation efforts. And that goes to any town that has propagation, and the state supports municipal propagation programs, and especially the county. So we do get funding from them to help our municipal propagation programs. And so that's our total for our seed in 2024, and that includes the 15% increase in our seed was just under 45,000. So the new proposed facility is slated to be able to grow a third more seed, and that equals to approximately 1 million additional cohogs. We suspect that probably would be higher, but we want to give realistic expectations, primarily because we want to be able to keep this a cost-effective program and be able to support it within the Shellfish Revolving Fund. So those numbers may be able to increase, but for certain, the footage is going to be bigger, and we would be able to grow at least a third more, which would be 1 million more cohogs. As far as our oysters are concerned, we've actually been upping that ante almost every year. It's a very, very popular program for us, but that is more space limited on the other side because we need to put them in floating cages, and we have them over at Stetson's Cove. But this year, I think we have about 350,000, and we're having a really great growing season this year. So, and I think the last question came at the end. It was that question. It was what the expectation was for the new upweller, and if we expected to need more additional help. And currently, our system works great. So we would not need, again, we need that labor on those big projects. It's not an everyday thing. So we use our seasonal help, as I said, coordinated between our enforcement folks and some propagation folks.
Okay, that's very helpful. Any questions for Renee? Andy, please.
Pardon me, part of your figuring included, a certain amount of money on cohogs, but it was almost double the amount for other things. I assume all of those other things were oysters?
Can you repeat that, Andy?
Sure. In talking about 2023, estimated wholesale values by year in dollars, cohogs $1.7 million, total $3.4 million, or roughly twice as much. All right. So
our oysters are recreational only, so this is only commercial landings that this is based on. So most of that is mussels, and we had a couple of good mussel years.
Okay.
And then I think this year we're going to be very surprised at how good our softshell clam year is. So.
right, but that's why I asked. I mean,
Yep.
there are a lot of folks who are not familiar with what kind of landings we have in Chatham.
We still have, and the number one most valued wild harvest of cohogs in the state of Massachusetts, and that we've been ongoing for years. So.
Thank you.
Okay, further questions? Joanne, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. $11 million is the economic value of this project. Can anyone here tell me what the overall fishing industry in Chatham is valued at economically?
The finfish included?
Everything, yes.
That I don't. I think that there are some numbers. I think that Hook Fishermen's Association, I can still call it the Hook Fishermen's, I'm so sorry. Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Association, they have really good qualifying numbers on the value of landed finfish, and I believe Chatham is still the third port
yes.
in Massachusetts.
Yeah, know that. I think it would be interesting for the townspeople to know what economic value of the whole thing is now that we know exactly where the shellfish stand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Other questions financially or operationally for Renee? Otherwise, we'll take it back to Carrie for the last couple of questions around tax rates and project impacts, although Greg is warily approaching the podium.
I just can't remember if I told Carrie that her questions are built into the slides.
Oh, thank you. I did not know that. So this was one of the questions that was asked, was update on the tax rate that will be used on the FY25 property tax bills. We don't have that information as of yet. We have a tax classification hearing on September 10th with the Select Board.
Mr. Chair? So what were we left with at town meeting? What do we think it is right now before you have the classification meeting?
I can't remember. I think it was around $3.75 or $3.77, somewhere around there at town meeting.
We'll never quote you on that.
I can't exactly remember the exact amount, but it was somewhere around there.
And it would be expected to change somehow, probably on FY26, if this bond issue is approved by the town.
Yes, that's correct.
It would have an effect.
Well, it would have an effect on FY26, yes.
And we don't know how much of an effect yet. It would be helpful to know.
So if we were to borrow the full $4 million in say we expended all of it in FY25, right?
Right.
All of the $4 million, it would have about a 3 to 4 cent tax impact on $1,000, which would be roughly around $34.67 on $1 million.
And so what is the average home evaluation at this point?
The average home value, I believe, is 1.2.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Carrie, just tangential to that, are we still roughly running at $100,000 per penny on the tax rate?
Yes.
110, 100?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, further questions for Carrie on tax rate implications, et cetera? Barbara, please.
Thanks. Carrie, that assumes an interest rate of 4.5% though, right?
Yes,
So it
yes.
could be a little bit lower.
It could be a little bit lower, yep, yep. I just kind of went a little higher. I wasn't sure, it's unpredictable. We don't know.
So if this goes through at the special town meeting, when do we go out to bid for the money?
Oh, to
For the
bid
bond.
for the project? You
Right.
mean like an RFP?
Right.
I would.
No. I mean, when do we?
For the borrowing, for the
Yes,
bond?
yeah.
Oh, around April, May,
Okay.
for the end of the fiscal year to cover the costs that were incurred during the fiscal year of FY25.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, any further questions on tax implications, financial implications? There being none,
Okay.
I'm going to open this up to public comment.
Oh.
Wait.
Did you want the other question? There
Oh,
was
wait, there's
a
more.
question asked
Yes,
by
please.
Joanne about
Sorry,
the towns.
I thought we hit them all, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Please.
This one was a total amount of the town's authorized but in unissued debt. So the total amount is 37 million, roughly $37 million is that we have that's unissued debt that was approved at town meeting, but we haven't borrowed for.
Excuse me for keeping on asking this.
That's okay.
What can that be used for, the unissued, authorized but unissued? It's authorized for a certain project, am I right?
Yes, so there's multiple projects that this 37 million includes. One of them is for a water treatment facility, wells 5 and 8, for around $19 million.
So we have we're building that right now, right?
Correct, yep. We actually recently, so this was before, we do have a $15 million clean water trust that's going to be coming through for that. The transfer station redesign for the 4.8 million, that hasn't gone through yet. Transfer station belt filter press for 4.5. The remaining of this one, which is 1.6. There's a stormwater project for 1.1. A wastewater project expansion pump station for 2.1. A wastewater expansion for 2.6. And there's water mains for $478,000. And then there's a couple older ones on here that I'm probably going to end up rescinding at town meeting.
That was to be my next question.
Yeah, there's a $560,000 one on here from '06 for well and pump station. So either we'll repurpose it or rescind it. And then there's a $99,000 one for a wastewater treatment facility that has not been used, and that's from '09. So, and those are so old that either rescinding or repurposing them at town meeting is appropriate because bond council doesn't let us, they don't like it when we have something sitting for so long on the books like that, so.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that. And
Yep.
what would you say the town's bonding capacity is at this point, before we issue new bonds?
That's a good question.
It is a good question.
I'd have to get back to you on that, just to verify.
I think it's an important question.
That's okay, I can get back to you on that. Do you know?
When we're talking,
It's over 100 million.
Yeah, I thought it was approaching 200.
I thought it was around 200
Based on the
million.
last
Yeah.
S&P.
I think I would like to know.
Yep, I'll get
When
you
you-
the exact figure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, and there's this question right here. How did the town finance the bulkhead for the 90 Bridge Street for the summer? It won't impact the tax rate because they used the Seaport Economic Council grant that Greg was talking to you about earlier. And they also used waterway user fees from revolving fund. And they also used some dredging account for the dredge work that was done prior to.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think we're going to shift gears slightly. Erica has a question regarding the opinion from town council. I don't know if, Jill, you might be able to field this ball or at least take it under advisement, excuse me. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a couple of process questions or comments, and we'll end with probably with a question. So I think it's good that we've kind of pulled this out and focused on the project. I think the downfall of the bond was, it was a little too broad and people probably didn't fully understand it. So I think I personally think this is a great project, and I think that there's some value to the town. I think from a process standpoint, I'm very concerned about what we're going through as far as using the previous vote that followed the annual town meeting that was for that bond issue. The town council has an opinion that vote would stand for this article at this town meeting. So I'm certainly not a lawyer, and I can't argue any of the merits of what's in here, and I wouldn't try. But I can say from my personal opinion, and I think the opinion of many people in town, is that it's inappropriate and that this article should stand on its own and should be voted on again by the taxpayers. What was voted on before was not even this. This was embedded in it, but it wasn't what we voted on. I think that I know that some of the turnout for the Council on Aging town meeting was process-based for the same exact reason, and people felt, and I feel, that was inappropriate to bring that, to say that if that passed, that vote would stand. It didn't, and I think that should have been a message that we shouldn't try to do that again. So those are my comments, and I guess my question is, are we locked into the process that we've been told is going to happen, where we have the special town meeting and no follow-on vote for the article?
Jill, is that something you can address?
So it's legal to have a ballot question before a town meeting vote. That's what town council had opined on. Some towns do that. Other towns, as Chatham does, has had the annual town meeting first, 2/3 majority vote to approve, and then a ballot question. And as you know, our annual election is just 4 days after our annual town meeting. So with a ballot question in any election, the town has the opportunity, the townspeople and voters can absentee vote. So what we've had success is at the ballot for people approving the projects, but certainly at town meeting, if failing to get the 2/3 majority. I can't speak to what we would do in the future, because it's only been in recent history that we've done a town meeting after the ballot question passed and the warrant articles did not get the 2/3 majority. This is a decision by the select board. In this particular instance, the Shellfish Advisory Committee had specifically made the request to the select board, and the select board voted 3-2 to actually call the special town meeting. So that's been called. What you're reviewing is the warrant article, and the request is for FinCom to make a recommendation on that so that we can get that printed in the warrant that will be posted, and that the public will know both the select board recommendation as well as the finance committee's recommendation. Again, this is not our standard practice. I can understand 2 years in a row, some may think that that's the case, but in essence, the select board was responding to a request to call a special town meeting after the vote.
Thank you, and I understand the response. Again, I'm not arguing that it's legal or not legal, or I think that I think there is a perception in town that it's not right, and I think that that's going to potentially cause some problems for getting this article passed.
Thank you, Jill.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. I would echo. I'm fully supportive of the opinion we received from town council. I'm not an attorney. I appreciate what it says and the conclusion it reaches, but I have heard and continue to hear, to reflect Eric's observations, concerns about kind of the game, and it's kind of getting rigged. And people generally have, what I've been hearing is people aren't happy about it. I don't need to repeat everything Eric just said, but I've heard that repeatedly from townsfolk. So, for whatever that's worth. Tracy, please.
For whatever it's worth, I've heard sort of the opposite, and I interact with a fair cross-section of the community, and anecdotal evidence is just that, but I've heard overwhelming support for it, that partially because it passed as a ballot question, like that does substantiate, why it's being addressed again. And I think that because it is broken out as the Bridge Street project, I think that the response will be quite different from the electorate in terms of, reaching the 2/3 majority or not. But I have not heard from people that what you guys have in terms of a disruption of, or a feeling that the order of operations is what the problem is. Not in my experience.
That's helpful, thank you. I'm not surprised to learn there's a difference of opinion in the town of Chatham. Shocking. Okay, unless there's anything else from the committee and/or town staff, I would like to turn it over to public comment. Mr. Taylor has his hand up.
Stephen?
Dean, I'm sorry. Yes, Dean?
Thank you. May I just offer a comment?
Yep, I'm sorry, I did not see your little hand up there in the corner.
That's all right. I just wanted to offer a comment on the issue that you and Eric have talked about, because I share the same concern. And I think one of my colleagues, Mr. Metter, shared the same concern. The two of us voted not to call the special town meeting. Let me say up front, I support the article. I voted to recommend the article. I've been supportive of this project from the beginning. I think I was on the finance committee with Joanne when we first voted to acquire the property. I just wanted to provide some reassurance. I don't think it's a very good practice to be calling special town meetings based on votes that occur on a ballot question that follows the failure of a motion to borrow at a preceding town meeting. And I have requested at the select board an agenda item, which I think is going to be heard on this 10th of September at our meeting, to consider changes to an amendment to the town's financial policies, which would discourage the use of this mechanism except in cases of emergency or exigency or housekeeping purposes. This is the second or third time when this has been invoked. And in this case, as Eric pointed out, the ballot question was actually, the article, I'm sorry, in May was actually much broader than the particular article that's being proposed. So my intent is is to have, I've drafted some language to amend the financial policies. That's going to be presented to the Select Board on the 10th. My recommendation to my colleagues on the Select Board is to refer that amendment, proposed amendment, to the Finance Committee and the town's financial advisors for comment and recommendation back to the Select Board. So it's an issue, I guess I just really wanted to say, it's an issue that I take very seriously, and as seriously as you and Eric, and I suspect maybe others. And it's a different issue from the merits of this particular article. The meeting was called, so I had to take a vote on whether I would support the article, and I voted yes. So did Mr. Metters. So I can't speak for Corey. I'm just trying to tell you what happened and what's hopefully going to happen going forward. So I just really wanted to get that point across.
Good. Thank you for that, Dean. Appreciate that. Sorry not to recognize your hand being up, and we'll look forward to seeing where the Select Board lands on that topic. Thank you. So, Mr. Taylor back, please.
Mr. Chairman, the committee, thank you very much. My name is Peter Taylor. I'm a retired commercial fisherman and shell fisherman. My wife and I are going to vote against this just because of the process question, but I have serious concerns about the upweller in general. And it starts with the handout that's going to be going to the town meeting about the economic value of this. Especially, it's kind of muddying the waters here when we talk about the $11 million, the value of that, because we're throwing in steamers and mussels and things like that have nothing to do with this upweller. All this is about cohogs. The economic value from this is cohogs, and that's it. Okay, so we're muddying the waters with this. And then when you look at underneath the picture, it shows down there translates and to 3.7 million economic benefit. This is for the cohogs, but the multiplier they're using, and it says right underneath it, is NOAA UMass economic multiplier for the shellfish aquaculture industry. So that multiplier is based on the fact that if all of this shellfish for those years was assumed to be the results of the aquaculture, which is not true. I have spent the last 2 weeks talking to people in Maine, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. There is not one person that will tell me that there is a study that proves this is cost effective, this aquaculture. I just broke my glasses. It is not cost effective. The best I can get out of anybody, and I just got off the phone with a guy from the state, from the aquaculture, one of the leading guys from the state, and he said that we're not even doing it correctly. He said, what you should be doing when you scatter seed is close the whole area down and let it actually grow. We're throwing seed out into actively shellfished areas, so it doesn't get a good chance to grow. So what he said to me, best case, he said, this is extremely risky endeavor that what we're doing. And he said, basically, it's a feel-good attempt. Nobody can quantify this. There isn't a soul that can quantify this. No study out there. And I guess if you want to spend all these millions of dollars on feel-good, I don't know. Everybody knows me. I like to spend town money on the fishermen and shellfishermen. I love it, but it's got to make sense. And to me, there's nobody out there that tells me this makes economic sense. There's not one person, and I've talked to dozens of people in states. I've talked to people on the Rhode Island Commission down there. They don't do this. Rhode Island has one of the biggest landings of cohogs, probably the biggest in the United States. they don't do that. They haven't done this for decades, and I ask why, and they tell me flat out, because it's not cost-effective to do this. So, thank you for your time. I
Very
hope I
good.
kept it under 4.
You did, well, I think you did. I started you late, but to your benefit, maybe. Thank you, Peter.
Good afternoon, members of the Finance Committee. My name is Tom King. I am the chairman of the South Coastal Harbor Management Plan Committee. I'm here today to speak in favor of proceeding with the completion of 90 Bridge Street project. For those of you who may not be familiar with the South Coastal Committee, it is an advisory committee to the town and the Select Board. The South Coastal Harbor Plan Committee is tasked with the implementation of the state-approved South Coastal Harbor Management Plan, which includes waterways and embayments of the Stage Harbor Complex, Southway, nearshore waters of Nantucket Sound, basically Lydia's Cove to Cockle Cove. The committee is also specifically charged by state regulation findings of consistency to ensure that all projects requiring the license of the Chapter 91 are consistent with the local harbor plan. The South Coastal Committee worked for several years to develop this project and has voted unanimously in support of completing this project. Our reasoning for the support of this is we believe it is solid, as it is a multi-use facility to be used by the shellfishing, commercial fishing, recreational boating, and educational communities. Our committee is committed to a healthy and vibrant working waterfront and ensuring waterfront access to the general public. We also believe in preserving the history and charm of Chatham is equally important. Completing the 90 Bridge Street project and bringing the Coast Guard Station back to life in Chatham as part of this project is the right thing to do on all fronts. I would like to cut to the chase and rebut some of the negative comments regarding this project. Some critics say the cost is too high and will most likely cost more in the long run. Yes, we agree it is a lot of money to invest in our working waterfront. However, this project is well underway, the necessary permits are already in place, and the new bulkhead is nearly complete. The property is ready for construction. The project is well designed, the cost estimates are feasible and realistic, provided we move quickly and avoid further escalation of construction cost. Time is of the essence. Critics also say the Coast Guard Station roof will be too high. Engineers have calculated the structure to be approximately 2.5 feet higher than the telephone poles across the street. Other critics say the view from the bridge will be blocked. Both east and west views from the bridge are currently considerably blocked by tall trees and vegetation. Yes, views looking directly out to the inner harbor will be impacted, looking towards the many very large houses on Stage Island. Critics also say, why can't the current upweller facility continue to be used? The current location and equipment is next to the busiest facility in Stage Harbor, where conflicts of use of commercial and recreational boats, fueling and cleaning are basically happening almost on a daily basis. We are one bad environmental event to wipe out the growing shellfish seed, and we have had some close calls in the past. In addition, the current equipment is in need of work and constant repairs, and in doing so, will only band-aid what is really needed to keep our shellfishing robust and one of the best in the state. Finally, the committee believes the town needs to work harder to protect the impressive maritime and nautical charm. As you may recall, Chatham many years ago lost the life-saving station to Provincetown.
30 seconds, Tom. 30 seconds.
Okay.
Thank you.
Almost over. Imagine if the town did not buy the Old Mill Boatyard, and now we have a chance to retain the iconic Coast Guard Station and to protect our working waterfront, just like our sister town, Nantucket, never let theirs go. We already have a Cape Cod with no codfish, declining fish, lobster, eelgrass populations. Do you really want to weaken the bright spots in our working Chatham waterfront by not supporting the shellfish industry, which is one of the town's best assets? Please support the vibrant working waterfront to help preserve our town's history and vote yes to complete 90 Bridge Street as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Bergstrom.
Good afternoon. I'm Ron Bergstrom. I should mention I'm currently chair of the Barnstable County Commissioners. I mention that because, as Renee pointed out, the county is involved in providing seed and financing, part of that seed to Chatham as well as other towns. I also serve on the State Shellfish Advisory Panel. I was appointed to represent the wild harvesters. So I don't know if that's because I'm wild or because I'm a harvester, but I qualify in both regards, so there I am. You know, I came to speak to you about supporting this project because I think it's a benefit to the shell fishery, but some of the discussions that you've had opened up some questions, you know. The charter leaves it up to the Board of Selectmen to determine the time and place of town meeting, and they did that, okay? That's over, you know, and I don't think you should prejudice your opinion on this project because you disagree with an opinion that was in their bailiwick. And I respect the opinions of Mr. DeCastro and Mr. Meadows, but, you know, I've been on the losing end of votes myself, and at the end of the day, you respect the outcome. So we're going to have a special town meeting. As far as bringing up a project which was included in the omnibus warrant article, you could say, well, it was included in there and the entire article was voted down, so we can't bring it up again. But the practical effect of that would be that in future town meetings, we're going to separate every single article into little pieces to make sure that one piece doesn't prejudice the acceptance of another. So there may have been people who came into that meeting and said, I like this project, but I don't like something else that's in the article, so I'm going to vote against it. To me, my personal opinion, to separate this article out and to present it to the town meeting is a more honest way of giving the voters a chance. Now, getting back to shellfishing, you know, I haven't done the comprehensive studies on the economic value of this that one of the previous speakers did, but in 40 or 50 years of shellfishing, I can tell you, you can identify the individual cohogs that are product of the hatcheries for various reasons. Ones of they tend to be all uniform in size when you get them. They also have distinctive markings on them. And I don't think that, and Chatham is not the only town that does this. It does this throughout Massachusetts, and Barnstable County supplies seed for other towns. You wouldn't think that they did this if it didn't work and it wasn't valuable. As far as the landings go, even if you go with the $1.7 million in landings that was mentioned by Renee, the total project cost of this would be $6.8 million. If you take a $1.7 million in economic value, and that's simply the shellfish alone, not just the overall economic value of having people come to town so they can bring their grandchildren out on the flats and dig some cohogs and so on. Even if you take that, that's short money. I mean, if I was an investor and I said I can invest $6.8 million and I'm going to get $2 or $3 million back every year, I'd have a flood of investors to do that. That can make some tremendous economic sense to invest in something that's going to high return. And the other thing I have to say is that, first of all, it's low tide right now, which is why you don't see a lot of shell fishermen here. They're trying to make their August money that's going to carry them through February.
30 seconds, please.
Okay, so anyway, I wholeheartedly support this project. I think it has value to a segment of our population, a segment of our economy that's often overlooked. And I think I certainly support it. I intend to show up at town meeting to support it. And I hope that you will support it on its face for its value and not bring in other discussions that really have nothing to do with the value of this project. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Shereen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I get started and start my 4 minutes, I do want to answer Ms. Craig, Joanne's question about the value of the fisheries in Chatham. The Cape Cod Commission did an economic impact of Cape Cod harbors back in 2017, and the ex-vessel value of Chatham was $20 million. That doesn't include the economic multiplier at all, nor does it include the recreational value of the fisheries in Chatham, which is very vast. If you think about it, you can think of the $1 million boats that are traveling throughout the town and catching stripers and all kinds of, and tunas. Okay. I think what I'm trying to say and what I'm going to say to you is the tax impact versus the investment. I got the opportunity this past month to work with Love Live Local on a white paper that will be called Seafood Matters. It's a report on the status of, it's kind of like local matters, the status of the fisheries on Cape Cod. So some of what I'm going to tell you can inform you. It's not specific to Chatham, but it is specific to Cape Cod, and it deals with some of the more significant things that may not be thinking about, and that's the economic, environmental impact, the cultural, and heritage and tourism impact. I have sightings here from several different case studies that were done from UMass, from the Cape Cod Fishermen's Alliance, and from the Cape Cod Commission, as well as URI. And so I just will be as quickly as I can, because I know it's only 4 minutes, and I'm happy to share after the fact. So, you know, our connection to the sea is deeply rooted, and you know, we've had a vast we have turned into a supplier of seafood since the 19th century, and in the 20th, we transformed ourselves into more of a tourism industry that embraced fishing and shellfishing. And shellfishing is not not an economic activity. It's a vital part of our cultural identity. And by supporting local shellfishing, consumers, particularly recreational harvesters, are feeding themselves, helping to preserve the tradition and practices and stories that define the region's unique maritime heritage. And the Upweller supports that. In one of the sightings, it said, small-scale fisheries contribute to preserving cultural heritage valued at approximately $10 million annually in terms of community identity and tourism revenue for Cape Cod. The economic value of Cape Cod's recreational shell fisheries is significant, but not completely documented. A study conducted in 2002 by UMass estimated the total value of Cape Cod's recreational shell fishing on Cape Cod to be approximately $7.4 million. This figure included both the permit fees and an estimation of the consumer surplus. But it doesn't reflect today's numbers at all, because that was a 20-year-old study and was based off a small number of permits. A new study is being done by Woods Hole, Hui, and UMass on recreational. But it's an important component to all of this. It's just not the commercial activity that we need to value here, and that can't be reflected in our landings. So the way we can rationale it is through what those cultural impacts are. Wild-caught shell fishing in Chatham's propagation program support sustainable practices that maintain our marine ecosystem and contribute to healthier shellfish populations and resilient habitats. And in another study that I read, it said that local fishermen on Cape Cod have invested $1.5 million in community-driven conservation projects over the past decade, contributing to improved biodiversity and oceans health. This project is that kind of program. And so choosing local seafood does reduce carbon footprint and helps us to have food here that doesn't have to travel a long way. The economic impact of Cape Cod's seafood industry and the direct spending by local seafood businesses support a broad range of all ancillary businesses in town, from the restaurant to the gear supply store to the boat mechanic and boat builder. And so all this is all supportive, even on a small scale like shell fishing. And we have a unique fisheries here. It's a wild fisheries. And it supports public access, which is really important today. I don't know if you all have been hearing about what's going on in Chatham, but there's a lot of private property owners that are trying to keep it, reduce our access to the waterways. But the more important thing about this, it contributes to food security. We have a unique opportunity in Chatham because we have a recreational permit process that allows for reduced rate permits for people, and it supports the elder population in getting both recreation and commercial permits. And this kind of activity augments fixed incomes and helps people to feed themselves.
30 seconds, Shane,
Okay,
please.
I'm just going to finish up then. Local fisheries provide 15% of the seafood consumed here annually. But there's one really interesting factor that I think you should note. The resiliency and sustainability of Cape Cod's fisheries as it relates to this project is small-scale fisheries on Cape Cod demonstrate an economic resilience with an annual income stability rate of 85%. The corporate more fisheries world is like 60%. So this is a stable economic venture. And we are entwined with our local fisheries here, and I hope that you will support. I hope you'll vote tonight in support of this. I don't think that was on your agenda, but I'd like to see you guys vote on this and bring it to town.
It is on our agenda, and hopefully be this afternoon and not tonight.
I mean, this afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Up to everybody in the room, I suppose. So, you, sir, please. I'm afraid I don't know who you are, but come on up.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Davis. I'm Chair of the Shellfish Advisory Committee.
Welcome.
Thank you. I think our position on this issue is self-evident. We're the folks that brought it forward. We did so because we thought we were being responsible. After the failure to pass in May at the town meeting, we listened carefully to feedback we got from people. They told us that they liked 90 Bridge Street, they liked the upweller, but there are lots of things they didn't like. They thought the project was too big, they couldn't understand, or they thought the cost was too big, they couldn't understand many of the projects. In order to rectify those issues, we felt we were doing the responsible thing by going forward, recommending to the select board that they change those things by isolating 90 Bridge Street as a standalone project and funding it accordingly. It's as simple as that. Likewise, we also requested a special town meeting because we saw no logic in letting this project sit idle for 8 to 12 months, simply waiting for the next annual town meeting. So those are the reasons we brought the project forward. It's as simple as that. I'd like to comment on a couple additional things. I think it's clear to everyone that shell fishing is part of the culture of Chatham. All you have to do is look at the number of permit holders. We have 3,000 people, roughly, last year that voted in favor of Chatham shell fishing by virtue of the fact that they spent their money to buy a permit. We appreciate that support, and it reflects favorably on the shellfish division. I'm not a commercial shellfisher person, so I may not have the expertise on these things, but when I look at something, I can tell whether it's working or not. And I tell you, this division is working very well. In addition to the cultural aspects, I think it's been demonstrated that shellfishing is an economic engine in Chatham. It may not be the biggest engine, but it certainly contributes its share given all the numbers you've heard. The final comment I would like to make is that relative to the upweller, and particularly the replacement of our existing upweller through the 90 Bridge Street project, there is no plan B. We have no alternative. It's evident that this building is on its last legs. Anyone who's been there can testify to that. Any semblance of a plan B would mean our going to an organization like ARC and buying larger, more expensive animals to put out into the wild. That's been proven that just does not work, and it is prohibitively expensive. So if we have no upweller, we lose our propagation program, and many of the cultural and economic benefits would eventually go away. So I urge your support on this very important issue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Shell.
Thank you. I step up here somewhat reluctantly, but I really feel that I should speak up on two simple issues. And maybe I should open by saying I look forward to what will be, I'm sure, a good discussion at the Select Board with my friends, Nick Astro and Metters, excuse me, on the subject that Eric raised as being of concern to him. I'm not a fisherman. For me, this project was a good one when it was considered as part of the larger bond proposal in May. I think that Ron Bergstrom expressed the investment proposition very well. Whatever we invest, whatever the number is, call it $6 million, call it $8 million, whatever it is, the return to the town is a good return, and it's also supportive of a very important constituency of this town, which carries a lot of weight for me. But the issue I want to address is the one that Eric brought up. When this came up, when the shellfishing advisory committee came before us, the first question was, is that legal? Can we do that? Not as a trick, not as some sort of a rigged thing, but rather it's a tool in the legislative toolbox between the select board and town meeting, which is the legislative body, that if the circumstances warrant, that you can come back to town meeting with a special town meeting call and raise an issue that did not receive a vote and by the way, we're talking about a 2/3 vote. I would have a very different attitude if we were talking about a lost majority vote. The thing I want to emphasize is we were advised, and you have been advised, that there are risks to waiting. There are all kinds of difficulties that potentially can arise. And that was the question that was presented to us. The question was, can we avoid some of those by asking town meeting to reconsider? That's what's happening here. I would hope, and I have tremendous respect for the concern that you expressed and that Dean expresses, but I would hope that we could take these on a case-by-case basis, and if the circumstances warrant, as I believe they very emphatically do in this case, say we need to take this back and ask town meeting to consider it again at a special town meeting. That's all this is about, and it's not a trick. It's not it's legal, and as Jill said, you could do it the other way around, and you would have the vote in hand from the town election before town meeting. It's just that we've always done it that way. I guess I'd close by saying this is not about going back and saying, gee, we lost, can we go double or nothing? I mean, this is about an important issue for the town that really does deserve reconsideration by special town meeting. And that was the basis on which, certainly that I voted for calling the special town meeting. So I thank you for your attention.
Terrific. Thank you, Mike. Others who may wish to speak to the committee? Okay. Any further questions for anybody on the committee for anything we've heard from the staff? Tracy, please. Comments? Sure, comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to underline some of what Shireen had brought up in terms of the cultural importance. As a child who came here in the summers to the grandparents' and the great-grandparents' house on the Cape and learning how to shellfish with them, to now being the parent of a guy that works in our commercial fishing fleet for the 3rd year and loves it, it would seem to me very sad to take away that lineage from generations of the importance of shellfish in the community or fishing in general. I also come to this from a restaurant and hospitality perspective, and being able to offer people food that is from where they're visiting is huge. You know, to be able to say these are local quahogs when you're offering them to your guests makes a very big difference.
Thank you, Tracy. Barbara, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to vote for this article, but I can't without saying that even though it's legal, the way that it's being done and with respect to the people who have explained why, and for all the good reasons that have been brought up here as to why this article should pass, and I believe those, for regular people like me this looks like a legal loophole, and I think a lot of people are, as Eric said, not going to be happy about seeing it done this way. Isn't there, I mean, couldn't there be another vote after the special town meeting so that this doesn't look so underhanded?
I will defer to the experts in the town, of which in that matter I am not one. Is that a rhetorical question, or do we? Probably. Okay, we'll treat it as a rhetorical question. Thank you, Barbara. Andy, please.
Thank you. There are a couple of things. First off, Barbara, you know, the great thing about democracy is you can ask those questions endlessly and you can get endless answers, and then you get to ask the same question again. Depends on how many people want to talk about it. And in the case of Prop 2.5, as I recall, quite a few years ago, the town was in a position of having to have a ballot question before town meeting could consider an appropriation. So it's not a completely new thing, at least as I recall. The other is that in the 2024 election, you know, better than 600 people voted in favor of this the article that was for significantly more money to exclude it from a bond. So yeah, there's a political risk, no question, but I think, you know, there's also a heck of a lot of people who want to see this go forward, and that we should be able to rely on that election result. I'm very much in favor of 90 Bridge. I think we need to get it completed. We need to move on. We can debate things like economic benefits, but the fact is many of the benefits are not economic. They can't be accounted for that way. You know, and as I said, move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Eric, please.
I'll be very quick. So I am going to vote against this article. And I want to make it clear that I actually support 90 Bridge Street and most of the things that were said and positive about it. It's all about the process, and I think some of the things that are being kind of maybe mashed together here, the vote that was taken after the annual town meeting included this project in the bond, but it really wasn't even a vote for what we're voting on at the special town meeting. It's a different thing. So that's where I see that it's not the same, and I don't think that's the intent. Again, the town council says you can do that, and that it is, and that it's embedded in there. But I think as a taxpayer, and I just don't see it that way, and that's why I'm going to vote against it, not because of the project or the benefits to the town.
Very good, thank you. Other comments, observations, questions? Joanne, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to give my observation. I believe that one of the major reasons that the town meeting did not vote for this project at town meeting was that it was not as descriptive as it is now. They didn't understand. They were talking about a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars, and they wanted to be sure that each project was worth their vote. And I think they didn't feel as if the whole basket was. So this project went down in defeat with the rest of them. I believe that we have a ruling by the town lawyer. The best we can get is that this is a project that can be looked at again and a town meeting can be held. And I believe that the people who go to town meeting will go and have the chance to vote for or against. That's democracy. That's what we're here for. And that's what town meeting is for. So I would like to express my approval of this project. From the beginning, I thought it was a really wonderful one, but I didn't want to vote for it in the midst of $11 other million or so. And I just want to say that I'm going to vote for it, and I think that the pathway to get there satisfies me as best it can, and I hope the townspeople who are in favor of this will, in spite of the pitfalls around it, come to town meeting and vote for something I think is important to the town economically and culturally, as has been mentioned.
Thank you, Joanne. Kristen, please. Oh, we're all declaring.
Yes, we might as well all give our comments. Just briefly, I agree with those of my colleagues here who are in favor of this article. And I would also add that our propagation program that contributes to so many more animals into our waterways really improves our water quality and contributes to the ecosystem. So yes, it's cultural, yes, it's economic, but there's also the holistic view of our waterways. So I am fully in favor of this project. And I think that the whole process thing is a separate discussion. And I don't like to see that we get things confused between the two, because what's going to be before us at town meeting is Article 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Okay. The casual observer might think there's a trend here, so let's see if that's the case. Any further comments or questions? If not, I'll take a motion to support the proposed Article 1 capital bond project, $4 million for the waterfront infrastructure project at 90 Bridge.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Andy. In favor, Tommy?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Eric?
No.
And the chair, it's interesting. I've traveled quite a road on this thing, I have found. Initially not being terribly supportive of it price tag, not necessarily the goals, but it just seemed like a considerable sum of money. I think the last several years of this, whatever it's been, 4 or 5 years, has given me an opportunity to reframe how I think about this project. That it's not, an $11.4 million project supported by state and local funding, but it is to the various comments that people have made. It's an economic project, it's a social project, it's a historical project, a cultural project. And it's really changed my thinking around the support of this project, so I'm in favor of it. And I think that makes it 7-1 in favor. So thank you, guys, and thank you all for taking the time to come and join us today and express your opinions. Thank you. Okay. Now, election of officers. You guys might want to stick around. This is the good part. All right, election of officers. Next on the agenda. All right. So we'll start out by, I'd like to propose for the vice chair position, Mr. Andy Young of North Chatham. Joanne has fastidiously supported me over these last few years and my absences and periodic incoherences, for which I'm eternally grateful. Thank you, Joanne.
You're very welcome, Mr. Chairman. And I would like to move that we vote Andy as the vice chairman.
Very kind. Okay. Are there any other prospective nominations for the role of vice chair?
My sincere hope is that our chairperson will show up for all of these.
Yeah, doctors had me just skating by, but fingers crossed. So, right, a motion and a second. Tommy, in favor?
Yes, favor.
Thank you. Barbara?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Chair's in favor. Thank you, Andy. Now we need a nomination for the role of chair. Are there any nominations? Barbara?
I would like to nominate our current chair, Stephen Daniel.
Second.
Any other creative ideas? There being none. Wow, suddenly a very creative bunch goes dark. All right, in favor, Tommy?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Chair, I guess I need to abstain, so I'll abstain. Can't vote for yourself. All right, anything further within and from the committee? Carrie, our handler, anything from you or the town manager that you wish to draw our attention to?
No, there's nothing more on the agenda.
Tax class, can you just give us 30 seconds on the tax classification hearing you're having with the select board? Just for the
It's-
public's benefit of what that is and what the implications are and et cetera?
It's, the tax classification hearing is in regards to the tax rate for FY '25, and it's on September 10th. And it will be presented by the assessor to the select board. We are currently working on going through valuation, well, the assessors are working through their valuations, because this year is a revalue year, so it's a little
geez.
later than usual, so hence why we haven't
And so
had it
the
yet.
intent or the goal of this hearing is to set the tax rate?
The goal of the hearing is to set the tax rate, that is correct. Yep,
Will be interesting to see where the valuation comes in after all the
yes.
continued frothiness in our real estate market.
So once we get the approval, we'll send it off to the Department of Revenue, and they'll look through everything. Yep.
Terrific, thank you. Joanne?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Is this reval the one that's done by the state, or is this the town using the program system based on what the state does every, 5 years?
Yeah, do you know the answer to that question? I don't know if there, what the difference is, the usual one? Okay.
So, what is it?
It's the one that we do here, right? The vendor, yeah.
It's like a computerized version?
Yes.
Okay, and then we get, every 5 years, we get the state actual revaluation,
Yes.
reassessing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Further comments? Barbara, please.
Can we just talk about the process a little bit?
Which process?
The one where we vote it down at town meeting, and then we vote for it at the polls, and then it comes back again like this?
Yeah, so, hold on. So the shorter answer is maybe. And I think I'd like to get a sense from the town manager. We don't specifically have an agenda item to talk about the process around this. I don't want to violate open meeting law as a result thereof, whether it falls under our consideration of the special town meeting article, capital bond project. I would argue it would seem to be Hoyle, but Jill, do you have a perspective? I don't want to go to jail.
Maybe we could call town council.
Got a call from Ron, what's his name? Beatty over. Ron Beatty. Called me up and accused me of an open meeting law violation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Vice Chair Nick Castro, Select Board Member Nick Castro, had mentioned that he is putting forward a policy discussion at the next Select Board meeting, which is September 10th, so I would suggest that you wait until that. And he had said that he's going to ask for a referral to the Finance Committee as well as our financial advisors. So that would be my recommendation, to hold until you have it on your agenda.
Yeah, that's helpful. Barbara, let's just plan, I think, to be safe. Let's just plan to take that road if that's okay.
Okay.
And I see Selectman Nicastro's got hit, no longer. It's the disappearing hand.
I was just going to echo what Jill said. I was simply responding earlier to Eric's question to Jill about what the future might be on this issue. And I thought it was important to inform the Finance Committee that there is some discussion that is going to take place at the Select Board that may ripple over to you. And I think it would be better under considerations of the open meeting law not to take it up today.
Okay, no, I appreciate that advice. Thank you. So that being the case, anything further from the committee?
Isn't there going to be a debate that night?
There's going to be a debate that night? Probably be a debate there. Well, I imagine there'll be a debate that night and probably one thereafter, depending on which way they go. Right? Tommy, please.
I don't think we voted for a clerk.
We didn't vote for the clerk. We used to have a clerk. Do we still have a, I vote to nominate Tommy Doan as clerk.
Second.
I second that.
All right, let's do this quickly. Tommy, are you?
My mistake.
Barbara?
Yes.
Joanne?
Definitely.
Andy?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yeah.
Eric?
Yes, and he needs new crayons.
I'm all in. All right, are you abstaining or are you voting for yourself?
I'll vote for myself.
Okay, 8-0. All right, we have a clerk, we have a slate.
I like round numbers.
Yeah, perfect.
Mr. Chair, I want to test your memory for a moment. Pulling out a
This is the house was
project.
made in 1936. Sorry.
Yeah, mine goes all the way, way back. Pulling out a project out of a group of projects is something I believe that this committee talked about 3 years ago, and I have a copy of your wording, the letter you sent to the selectmen recommending that that not be the case in the future, that the projects are taken one by themselves and make it easier for the town to see and easier for us to plan. You may have forgotten that, but I just reread it just the other day, and it is proven true that it's almost not fair for us to present to a town meeting that don't have the hours to spend on this as we do, to lump things like that together and ask them to vote for $11 million.
Well, I think it's no secret that this committee is supportive of encouraging the select board to prioritize their projects. Sort of break them out and really make the case for them serially. I'm not sure, I mean, there, I think can come a point where that can be an excessive exercise. We don't need to be approving how many pencils the school district buys, but for things of this magnitude and this impact, I think we've made it clear to the select board that we think there's a better approach than what historically they've done.
Well, I know they are the policymakers, and I know we can't interfere with that, but we can keep recommending.
Yep.
And I think this is an example of what can happen, or maybe what can go wrong.
Sometimes it's nice to have a rock in your shoe.
Well, if you look at that 2000.
Think about it. It's the one thing you can't get rid of. So, Barbara?
If you look at that 2017 vote for 11.3 million, at least several of those projects were under that same umbrella, and they haven't been started, haven't been done. So, of course people are confused. I am confused.
Yeah, me too.
All right. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Tommy in favor?
Yes.
Barbara?
No.
Joanne?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yep.
Eric?
Yes.
Chairs in favor. 7-1, let the record show. I guess Barbara wanted to stay here tonight. All right. Carrie, thank you. Jill, thank you.